vaccine status as long as they could prove a negative or provide a negative pre-departure test. However, that's been reversed within hours on the basis that it appears to have been issued erroneously. Julia Lobuced is the CEO of Advantage Travel Partnership, a global leisure and business travel network. Julia, thank you for your time. Actually, it would be, I think, to mischaracterize this as a U-turn, because it was seemingly a very swift withdrawal of what, on the face of it, was wrong information.
It is indeed, Darren. From what we understand, the Spanish Tourist Board unfortunately issued incorrect or misinterpreted the information that was presented by the Spanish authorities. And we were very happy for one moment, because we did feel that actually, for once, at last, Spain was opening up to all travellers, regardless of vaccination status. But as you say, unfortunately, a few hours later, they corrected their information, apologising profusely for the misinterpretation. So, not great at all.
So it takes us back to where we were before this accidental release of misinformation. So if someone is vaccinated, firstly, which the majority of the population in this country is, if someone is vaccinated, what is the situation for them getting into Spain?
So if you're fully vaccinated, and in Spain, the fully vaccination definition is that you've had your second vaccination within 270 days of travel.
So not necessarily the booster, but that you've had the second dose.
Absolutely right.
Within
yes.
270 days. Okay.
Absolutely. If you've had your second vaccination outside of 270 days, that's where you have to have had your booster to be classed as fully vaccinated. So if you fall into one of those two camps, you can go along to Spain. You actually need no documentation now. That is a rule they did change. So you don't even need to complete their health authority form now to enter Spain. You can go to Spain, return back, and there are no extra protocols that you do need to undertake at all.
And so just to be clear then, for vaccinated travellers, as we've defined them there, is a test needed to get into Spain?
No test, no nothing. It is worth noting, however, that the mask rules still apply in Spain. So the authorities there have extended that till the end of April at least. So in all public areas, you must still wear masks, unlike what we've got used to here.
So for unvaccinated travellers, which is anyone who's only had one dose, presumably, or anyone whose second dose falls outside the 270 days and hasn't been boosted, we go back to where we were. Remind us of what the rules are for such people.
Absolutely. And if we talk about adults first who are unvaccinated, so the rules are as they were, as they have been, whereas unfortunately, even with a test, you are not allowed entry. So Spain do not permit anyone without a vaccination, regardless of having a test, etc., to enter Spain. The only exception is if you have recovered from COVID. So if you have recovered from COVID within 180 days and you have your COVID recovery certificate, then you can enter Spain as unvaccinated.
Okay, so essentially testing is not part of the process for anyone other than those who have recovered from COVID, it seems.
Unless, where it gets a little complicated, yes. we're children, because nothing is straightforward.
Right, okay, with children, okay.
So we're children, so if you're under 12, you can go to Spain, no vaccination required, no testing required. You do need to complete the health authority paperwork, but essentially that's all that's needed. If you're a teenager between 12 and 17 and you are either partially vaccinated, unvaccinated, you can enter Spain, but you must do a PCR test. And that's got to be done within 72 hours of travel.
Okay, so Spain is obviously a very popular tourist destination for travellers in and from the UK. You described yourself as, and your organisation and the industry as being disappointed by this, and you were quite pleased for that brief period where it seemed as if these restrictions were being... It follows then that you don't really think there's a place for them in Spain and for Spain at this point.
I think the problem being is travel is different. It's complicated, as we've just gone through there. Even if you're vaccinated and you've got children in particular, things are just a little, got a lot more things to think about. And the reality for a lot of travellers haven't travelled in the last 2 years. So things are a bit different. People can get very anxious. So what we want quite clearly at the right time is to ensure that we can travel frictionless as we were all used to travelling before. Simplified travel, at the right time for everybody. So that's really where we need to get to.
I mean, I'm just back from the States with my partner, and it's a nuisance. It's a inconvenience to have to get the test within a day of travelling, and we are vaccinated and fully boosted. But of course, you need evidence of that as well. But it's not much more really than an inconvenience as far as the USA is concerned. The restrictions as far as getting into Spain are concerned are less onerous than that, aren't they?
Yeah, I agree, Dan. I've travelled right the way through the pandemic. I was in New York in December, and you're right. I think that's the point. If you have travelled, once we've done it, you think, well, actually, this isn't too bad. I followed the rules. It's as you say, it's a bit of an inconvenience, a bit stressful. Waiting for your test results to come through. But actually, we can travel, and we remember why we enjoy travelling.
Yeah.
So I think that's the real bit. I think the reality for a lot of people at this time of year, if you're travelling for leisure purposes, you're possibly travelling with kids, with a family, and it's stressful anyhow when you've got, when you're travelling with family. So I think anything that uncomplicates it, that simplifies it, helps the industry get back to servicing customers in a really easy, fun way, bring the fun back into travel. That's where we need to get to.
Well, I couldn't agree more, except that we'll just do a word on this if we can as well, Julia. Lots of people hoping after a couple of years to get on a plane and enjoy themselves over the holiday period, the Easter period. And of course, we run straight into the chaos at Heathrow, the chaos at Manchester Airport, the chaos trying to get across the channel for a variety of reasons. It's not a great time to try to get away for non-COVID reasons as well.
Yeah, I think it's a culmination of many different factors that play here. And as we've been talking about, a lot of people haven't travelled. The significant surge in business that has, accumulated, over that period of time, resulted in the scenes that we've seen at airports the last 2 days and the weekend. It's just a perfect storm. And, it's obviously not at every airport. It's not, every minute of every day through the airports, but it's not ideal. It's frustrating. And, we've got to get to a point where, these things are put in place. Airports are able to operate it in a manner that ensures consumers can have, a great experience when they're travelling for the first time.
Is it excusable, really, given that airports and airlines particularly rightly complained and raised enormous concerns about the existential threat that COVID was posing to them and to their industry? When people do start wanting to travel again, they seem to be completely amazed by that concept.
Yeah, I think the reality is for an industry that has literally shut down. I mean, all our airlines, they were, operating 95% less than what they should have done in like 95% less capacity than they've done compared to 2019. So when you have to shut down at scale, unfortunately, that requires you to look at, measures to, cost-cutting measures. We lost 200,000 travel industry personnel during COVID, right across the ecosystem. Trying to recruit them back now is a real issue. It's not an excuse. It is the reality. It's a real issue. And COVID's still obviously quite high infection rates at the minute. So we've got a lot of staff that are off sick. So, that with the pent-up demand, has created what we've seen. And I think there are individual operational issues that different airlines, airports need to work through. It's not an excuse. The industry must do better now. We must learn from what we've seen and make sure that the experience is a great experience from now on.
But have some airlines maybe been guilty of getting rid of more employees than they ought to have done under cover of COVID so that they could save money in a way that they might not have been able to had there not been an excuse?
I don't know. I don't run the airlines. I mean, I'd like to. We'd all like to think not. We all like to think that we're all great business people that do the right things at the right time. The reality is, if we look back in December, none of us even knew in the industry if we were able to operate, in the months ahead. So we've all had to make really difficult decisions in making sure businesses can be sustainable. We can look after the people that are in the business, but try to build up when the time has been right, knowing when restrictions were going to ease. Restrictions only eased 5-6 weeks ago. So it's been a really, really difficult period to try and get the industry back to where it needs to be.
Julia, thank you. Julia Lowe-Bused is the CEO of Advantage Travel Partnership, a global leisure and business travel network. So as you